Our Civic Association Director, Steve Ross, as our guest speaker. Steve is the chairman and founder of Related Companies, the group that just completed the West Palm Beach Hilton and Okeechobee Boulevard at the Convention Center. And also has got one of the largest project in New York, I believe, is the Hudson Yards, a huge program. Steve formed Related in 1972. Today, the company is one of the largest owners of affordable housing. It has developed more than $22 billion in real estate and owns real estate assets valued at over $20 billion. Steve is the owner of the Miami Dolphins, which I'm sure he'll talk about this morning. He's the chairman of the board of the directors of Equinox Holdings, serves on executive committee, and is a trustee of Lincoln Center, New York, Presbyterian Hospital, and the Guggenheim Foundation. He's a director on the board of the Culture Shed and the Jackie Robinson Foundation. There's an interesting piece about Jackie Robinson in the New York Times today. Some picture goes back into the 1940s of him working with some people from City College. Mr. Ross is also a director on the board of the World Resources Institute, WRI, and recently established the WRI Ross Center for Sustainable Cities. In 2013, Steve pledged to give more than half of his estate to philanthropic causes and charitable organizations through the Giving Pledge. He graduated from the University of Michigan with a bachelor's degree in business administration, from Wayne State University Law School with a JD degree, and from New York University School of Law with a master's of laws and taxation. Introducing, we're going to have a question and answer style program here. And originally, the person going to do the interview was Megyn Kelly, but she was tied up with an event with Trump. So we are very fortunate that Steve is going to be interviewed by his friend and fellow Civic Association Director, Bob Nederlander. Bob has been the managing member of the Nederlander Company, LLC, which owns and operates theaters outside the metropolitan New York, an officer and director of Nederlander Organization, Inc., which operates theaters in New York City, and president of Nederlander Television and Film Productions, Inc. He's a limited partner in the New York Yankees Partnership, and he served for 16 years as an elected regent for the University of Michigan. Bob graduated from the University of Michigan with a bachelor's degree in economics. He earned his JD from the University of Michigan Law School and received an honorary doctorate of laws in 1990 from his alma mater. Steve and Bob, thank you so much for being here this morning. Please join me in welcoming our Civic Association Director, Steve Ross, and Civic Association Director, Bob Nederlander.
You go first. You're sitting in the first one. Thanks, Bob. You're over there.
Over there.
We're all proud to be here. You should know that this is a sold-out house. There's a show in New York called Hamilton, which didn't get the attention like this. So Steve is a big star, and he's agreed to be photographed. You already heard about Bob and what he's done, where he went to school, the University of Michigan, and what he's done for the University of Michigan and all of the things. He's an important guy in the city of New York and elsewhere, all across the country. He will tell you, we're going to divide this into four things. One, we're going to talk about Steve personally. Then we're going to talk about his charitable contributions. Then we're going to talk about the University of Michigan. And then a few things, other things will come up, but there'll be a period of about 10 or 15 minutes which people can ask questions from the audience. So to begin with, you know Steve is a very resourceful guy. He is a risk taker. Steve, why don't you talk some of the big risks you've taken over the years in your real estate and sports and so forth?
Well, that's a hard question. I mean, I guess to be successful, you got to take risk. And I guess in taking and being successful, you can't be afraid to lose. So I think they probably, go together. But I think you want to, kind of understand risk, because if you don't understand risk, you're not going to succeed in the long term. And I think when you start with nothing, you're not taking much of a risk no matter what you do. So that's where I started. So I don't look like the fact that I took a lot of risks. I had to do it, whatever I did. But I think in real estate, when you're developing real estate, you're dealing with leverage and highly leveraged properties, and I think you learn what the impact of leverage can be in a down market. And probably one of the great lessons I ever learned was when I was over-leveraged, when there was no liquidity in the early 90s, and how I had to really readjust my thinking in terms of reorganizing my company and recognizing that equity was an important thing to have, and that you could make as much money with half of a deal than you could with 100% of the deal if it's structured properly, and you can sleep a lot better. But I guess risk has really not been something that I've really been afraid of or shy of, because when you started with nothing, I figured everything is bonus, what I have. So, you like to do the right thing, and you also have to think of the long term and what you're doing, and, it's kind of fun,
Well, when you have $22 billion of real estate holdings, you had a lot of risk during that period of time. You built the Time Warner building. You got Hudson Yards, which is, a $20 billion development in New York. And you've got a big development over in Queens. You want to talk about those?
Well, I mean, being a real estate developer, you first start in business, and you need just to make enough to sustain yourself, and then you want to keep growing. And I guess I had a large appetite, and I just loved what I was doing, and developed passion. I don't think you really grow unless you really have a great passion for what you're doing. And I think once I found my passion, and you want to have an impact, and you want to do, and I guess I always grew up with the idea you wanted to be the best in class, whatever you did, and you wanted to succeed. And I think as you success breeds success. And so I've been very fortunate and with my business career and the opportunities I've had. And there's nothing more important to me than doing things that are really impactful and transformative. And my big passion is really cities, and really trying to make the cities wherever I am a better place. And that leads into developing large projects. Like down here we did City Place and in West Palm Beach, and we're still continuing to do that and build upon that, and knowing the importance of that, to this city, as well as in New York. We have built, we're the largest multifamily developer, but then we've gone into mixed-use projects with Time Warner Center. And after we developed Time Warner Center, the question was, saw the impact of that, what do you do next? And then the opportunity of Hudson Yards came along, and that's the largest project ever developed in the United States. And, I love challenges, and we took that on, and it's really, really exciting, and seeing how that's going to really transform New York and create a really new heart of New York City. It's a 20 million square foot project, mixed use, and we have 10.5 million square feet under construction today. So.
And you also have affordable housing in Queens. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, I mean, I started in affordable housing, which is really a great place to start, because there's a lot less risk in building affordable housing. It's more complex in understanding the different aspects of financing it and the social needs that are requirements of the tenants. And it was a great way to start my career, and then build upon that. And in New York, we finished what Bob's talking about as the largest project probably in the last 30 years. It was a 1,000-unit kind of affordable housing project, more for working class people that are being priced out in New York along the waterfront in Queens. And we're continuing to build and preserve affordable housing throughout the United States. We probably have one of the largest portfolios of affordable housing in the United States. And it's an area that I think is so important that people today, once you've developed them, people look to, once the regulations are passed, the people want to convert them to market rate, and I believe that's the most important aspect we need in our cities is affordable housing, because you need the diversity in the cities, and you can't afford to replace the housing that's already been built with new housing. So it's a very important thing, and we've led a really kind of the country in really understanding the preservation of affordable housing, which is so important.
Why don't you talk about why the football team, the Dolphins, is so important to you? Because in all of your other projects, you controlled it. You were the deciding person. Now you're one of 32 teams. You can't control the league. All you can control is your own destiny when it comes to football. And you took a big risk when you hired a 37-year-old coach. Want to talk about that?
There's a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
Well, first, I bought the football team because it was always a passion of mine. I love sports, and as a kid, I played football. But if I wasn't good enough, I'd say, well, one day I want to own a team. But when the opportunity came, and it was Miami, because I went to high school in Miami and lived there for many, many years. I really, seized the moment, and it was very exciting being able to own the Miami Dolphins, and, the challenge of trying to create a winner, which I find is a lot harder than I thought it would be. It's not quite like business. It's a lot easier to succeed in business than it is creating a winning football team with all the rules they have, and, you know who you want to hire as your coach, what players you like, except with all the rules they have, you can't go signing those players, and trying to put together a winning team is really something really, really challenging. And I'm going to get it right yet. I haven't gotten it right yet, but I got to tell you.
How did you choose the 37-year-old coach for Miami?
Basically, the way I've grown my business and hiring people is really looking for the brightest people you can find that are hardworking and passionate in what they're doing. And I think that's a formula that always works if you can find the right person. And the person that we found was kind of really met that criteria. He's one of the hardest working, smartest guys that as a young coach, and he's driven, and I think he was the most highly sought of coach, or at least recognized coordinator. And basically, what happens in the National Football League, typically the new head coaches, and every year there's anywhere from 6 to 8 coaches, because it's the most objective thing in the world. Everybody looks at their won-loss records, and there's no other excuses. So that every team, if you're after 3 years, you haven't made the playoffs, you're looking for a new head coach. And that's just the way it is. The fans want it because that gives them hope. Football's one great thing is that there's always hope the next year. It's not like business. You can put aside what's happened the previous years, and you start afresh the new year. And typically the coaches that are selected are either offensive or defensive coordinators or former head coaches who had that experience. And I would say that's probably 95% of the coaches in the National Football League have gone up that way. Instead of getting a retread that really hasn't had a great track record as a head coach, I was looking for somebody that really could be the next, if you will, Bill Belichick, Bill Parcells, really great head coach. And I think we found one, and I'm very excited about the fellow that we found. He lives and breathes it, and he's as bright as anybody you'd ever want to find. And I'm very excited about it. I think I found the right guy.
How has owning the football team enhanced other business opportunities?
Well, the way I look at life is always kind of, in my business, is always connecting the dots. And I always, knew that in buying a football team, it's the common denominator amongst all of us. Sports. And it also opens the door to so many opportunities. I know, you know, before, you know, you got to call to get appointments with people. If you own the Miami Dolphins, what people know you are, it's easy to get an appointment with anybody just about. So it really opens the doors it's incredible. And also the opportunities that come in and the ability to connect the dots. So I found it very exciting. It's really enhanced myself personally because it's allowed me to diversify a lot of the things that I was doing, and at the same time has really helped my business in terms of also connecting dots both in my business as well as in sports. And there's tremendous opportunities in sports, and sports is becoming more and more of a major profession or industry in this country because of the importance of the content of sports and what it means today. And just like the values of the teams have gone up so much just in a short period of time since I bought it, they've more than doubled the value of sports franchises, at least in the National Football League, and probably that's true of the other major sports leagues. And then the opportunities that arise from owning that and connecting the dots with the team like the football team has really been great in my life in terms of giving me new opportunities and learning about new aspects of business and life.
Why don't you talk about soccer and how are you involved in that?
Well, I mean, soccer is one area that I saw by owning the Dolphins. In the first year, we had an exhibition game with two of the, I think it was Barcelona and Real Madrid or something like that, or two of the important European teams. And they sold 73,000 tickets in August. And I said, Jesus, if you can fill a stadium that easy, we can't do that with a football game. I said, there's a real market here. And then you looked at all the stadiums across the country that are really underutilized, and knowing the appetite for European soccer in this country, we created a league, which was really the preseason for the European soccer teams, and brought those teams to this country. They were going around and what they called playing friendlies with each other. And sports, what's a friendly? Sports just doesn't go together. So we created a competition and brought them all together in a tournament, and we called the International Champions Cup, and we got Guinness to sponsor it. We got a television contract. We're 3 years old, and we now also have that tournament going on in China and in Australia and the U.S., and we bring all the great teams together and play for a championship. So that's something that grew out of it, and I saw it as the ability to really utilize these large stadiums that have plenty of dates available. So and now with the sponsorship and the television contracts we have over 1 billion people that are watching it, and we're in 180 countries with that tournament. So
why don't you talk about the University of Michigan? As you may or may not know, the Ross gift is the largest single donation in the University of Michigan history, giving over $330 million to the university. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, I went to the University of Michigan. I haven't gone to high school in Florida. It was very important in my life, and I always believe in giving back. And I guess, I believe in the expression, you give till it feels good. And someone got me at the right time, and I believed in it, and I really, have a great deal of love for the University of Michigan. It's a very unique place. It's a great combination of academics and sports, so there's an enthusiasm on campus, and it's just a great place to go. And Bob, you were a regent, and actually my first gift that I forgot, he solicited me, he being a regent at the University of Michigan.
See what happened, $330 million.
Right, I was living in New York, and that's what it, grew into. Thank you.
And I don't think it's thank you. I think, why did you do this to me?
Hey,
But
I was fortunate I was able to do it.
Steve is a very charitable person. He pledged to give away half of his assets. You want to talk about that with the Gates Foundation and so forth? Why don't you talk about that?
Well, I mean, I guess when you start with nothing and you end up and you're in a position and, how much money can you spend and how much can you leave to your kids and how much can you do? And, it's nice to be able to really, give back. I really believe that's something that I guess was ingrained in me as a kid. And fortunately, I was in a position to do it. And it's something, to be able to make the world a better place is, one of the reasons why you live.
Well, this is the brochure that the University of Michigan puts out on Steve. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages, and he's never seen it. I showed it to him. It's a remarkable life history of what he's done at the University of Michigan and what he's done in the charitable area. And University of Michigan's very proud to have him as an important part of their fixture of helping the university in so many ways that you don't even know. But his continual support has been great for the university, as well as many other causes. You want to talk about other charitable situations you're involved in, the Jackie Robinson situation?
Well, I mean, I've been on the board of Jackie Robinson, and that's just, really gives money to underprivileged people to really go to college and help them grow. But I think one of the important things that I'm involved in really came out of football. And many of you might remember the incident we had, the bullying incident we had in Miami 2 years ago. Was on the front page for about at least 2 months anyway. And I guess at that point, I kind of looked into it, and I went back to Detroit, where I grew up, and took a tour with the governor and the Secretary of Housing, and seeing what had happened to Detroit, which I saw was all a question of really racism. And this bullying incident was also really a product of racism, and it came together with me, and having kind of owned that with the Dolphins and being identified with that, I decided that gave me the opportunity to do something positive about racism, which is one of the big issues in our country today. It's always the elephant in the room. And so what I've done is I have gotten every single major league, the commissioner of every single major league, baseball, football, hockey, basketball, all the other sports, NASCAR, tennis, golf, on a board. I created this, it's called RISE, the Ross Initiative in Sports for Equality, and got the heads of the television networks, the sports departments, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and Turner, on the board, and with the sole purpose really dealing with racism and really recognizing that sports is really the common denominator in our world today, and that all sports, no matter what age you are, the top athletes, if you're playing in the little leagues or in the professional leagues, you're role models, and really using that to and using sports to create change, because it's never really been used as something to really create change, because if there's any place in the world where there is equality, it's really in sports. And I think this is something with education, and we're setting up programs across the country in educating kids when they first start playing sports, and then going on through college, and working with, I know in Michigan, they've, which is really kind of the test case we're using, the governor's gotten behind it, and we're having legislation dealing with education and creating a pledge with anybody playing sports starting in organized sports. So I think it can start having an impact, and I think it's something important, and it's like bringing everything together. But, these are the kind of things that are kind of interesting and fun to do.
Well, I have here 3 pages of what Steve Ross has done in the charitable area. And I'm not going to read them because it's quite a list. And we should be very proud of the fact that he's a resident down here. He works hard for people, and he's always available should you need him. Anyone? Now I'm going to open this up to audience questions. Anyone? Alf Dreyfus.
Steve, I think it was shortly after we opened the Gravis Center that
Yes. Well, thank you. We're not done yet. Yes, it's great. Yeah. No, I mean, I think this area has really got a lot of great future, and I think, the growth is both, the Kravis Center and City Place, and seeing the thing that's happening in West Palm Beach, I think it's really great for this community.
Go ahead.
Steve, a lot of parents and even former football players are talking about the fact that they don't want their children to participate in organized football because of the concussion issue. Obviously, the owners have spent a lot of time discussing this. Where do you think this is going to lead, and can it have a significant impact on the future of football?
Well, I mean, I think it can have a significant impact, right now when you see movies like Concussion and the impact that's having on people and how they look at it. I think the National Football League recognizes it. They're doing a lot of things and research and trying to really kind of answer the questions, and obviously it's a major concern. And they take, and there's so many people, so much is written about those players who are really, kind of identify with the ramifications of the concussions. But there's so many players, and it's such a much larger percentage. In fact, that's a small minority that have had no impact in doing it. And people at the same time love football. I mean, it's really the national pastime. I know many people have expressed that they, would rather not have their children. If I had a child, I'd let them play. But I think there's a lot of research that needs to be done, and I know the league takes it, incredibly serious. I mean, the press doesn't really give them a lot of benefits. I mean, the New York Times is doing everything they can to kill the National Football League, with their views of it. But I think people's passions for football will continue. I mean, it is a great, pastime, and that certainly hasn't lessened. And I think that we will find, some type of solution, both between the rules and, or if there's a gene that causes concussions when you get hit, or whatever. With the research, we'll find something that really will cause parents to feel a lot less concern, for their children.
Over there.
Went to the University of Michigan, always thought of it as the bastion of intellectual pursuits. Your contributions were large to the business school and even larger to the sports football team. Do you think, or do you assess football as perhaps the biggest business at the University of Michigan today?
Not at all. I mean, not at all. I mean, Michigan is a great academic institution, and most of my dollars have gone to the academic side of it. I recognize what makes Michigan unique is the blend of sports and academics, and the way it creates that the college atmosphere there, which is really unique. But I don't think anybody would want to, just, give money to a football team, because that's not what it's about. Professional football is where you really want to give, where I give money anyway.
As a region, and I was there for 16 years, Michigan wants to be known as an academic institution, and incidentally has good sports. There's plenty of literature on the question that the Senate, which was the faculty of the University of Michigan, have turned down all kinds of things related to sports because they don't want to hurt the academic standards of Michigan. Go ahead. There's another question. Yeah.
Alex Brunner, you've signed a Buffett pledge, and I was wondering what criteria are you going to use to select the charities and the causes that you're going to invest into?
Well, I'm going to be setting up a foundation, and some of the investing is going to be going into you know, making this New York City a greater place, you know, Palm Beach, and because I really believe in cities, and other types of investing is going to be going towards active investing of causes that I believe in and will develop, you know, as I get older. But you know, what that's going to be, I haven't really totally determined yet. I'll work with my wife and children and really, you know, what their passions are in giving, because I think that's so important as well, because they'll be the ones carrying it out when I'm no longer here.
Back there.
You mentioned Detroit a few times, and I'm from Detroit, and I'm wondering if you could comment on Detroit's economic recovery and what's going on.
Ooh, that's a tough question. I mean, Detroit, the region, and everybody thinks the whole region is depressed, and that's not really the case. It's really the city of Detroit, where I was born and kind of, you know, spent the first 15 years of my life, which is a city that was 2.5 million when I left there. Is now 700,000, and probably 90% are in some type of aid. I think that there's a lot going on. I think young people see it as a really great social experiment. It's going to take a lot of time to really rebuild Detroit, even though so much is being written about it. But you have to really, it's starting from scratch. There's no infrastructure there. I think really any great city needs jobs to grow, you know, and you can talk about all the things and all the money you put into it, but people aren't going to really grow till you have jobs. And you need an infrastructure because you need education, you need security, and you need money to do it. And all those things are really, you know, happen slowly. And today, as you look around, most cities and states are broke. The federal government's broke. Where's all this money going to come from that's really going to help Detroit really come back? But, you know, like everything else, what comes around goes around. It's just going to be a long period of time. You know, I think the economy of Michigan and metropolitan Detroit is good, but it's a question of Detroit itself as a city. You know, it's not going to be as easy, though you hear so many good things about it, and they are in the right direction, but it's going to take a long period of time, I believe.
Question over there.
I have two questions for you. Who's your favorite player of all time, and who did you idolize growing up?
Sports idol? I guess, you know, I guess my favorite player of all time, I guess, would be Gordie Howe, who was a hockey player, you know. But he played for such a long period of time. I mean, I remember as a kid, first, you know, and Detroit was a major sport. And when I was a kid, they were winning the championships. And I think until I was about 45 years old, Gordie Howe was still playing. So, you know, it was great. And he was a gentleman. He was just a wonderful person that I had met. So it probably, you know, was my favorite player of all time.
Anyone have any other question? There you go.
I'm curious, do you think America is really ready now for a great soccer? Steve Ross is brought, the Warner Brothers brought in Pele, the greatest players in the world, to stop us, and it just fell apart. I mean, are they ready for this something now?
I mean, there's a lot, you know, talked about, you know, written about how soccer, you know, is really going to undo football in this country. I think that soccer is certainly, you know, a growing sport, but I don't think it'll be a long time before it becomes a major sport. I think a lot of the mentality today, that you have the Major League Soccer, but really, I don't think Americans can really look at soccer as being a major sport that they'll go to without the stars, the greatest players. And we don't, you know, kids are playing it, but the great players are all in Europe. That's where the money is, and I think that'll continue to be the case. And so I don't think it'll become a major spectator sport in this country, you know, for a long period of time, because people really want to watch the greatest players in the world. I mean, that's what baseball's about, basketball, you know, football, and because people feel those are the greatest players in the world playing here on this stage, but they're not playing soccer in this country. So I don't think that it'll really become a national sport. I think it's great for kids and for all those parents who think their children shouldn't be playing football. It's a great alternative. But I really still don't believe it'll become, a major sport in this country in terms of spectator sport and major content.
You just made the headlines in the Palm Beach Post about soccer. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a question on the light side. For years, I've been curious where you got the name of your company, Related. What's Related?
The way I got the company, I knew when I started the company I wanted it to be a national company, and to get a name that could be registered in all states was a very difficult thing. And I didn't want to be named after me because people don't want to work for a person. They want to be part of a company and part of a team. And so I saw one day I was walking Related Designs, and I just thought to myself, everything in real estate's related, and I'm creating a team, and I didn't have any family. I wasn't married then. So I called it the Related Companies, and then we have Related Development, Related Management, and it's a crazy name, but it stuck. What can I tell you?
Yeah, go ahead.
How are the NFL owners meetings different from other boards you're on, and what can you share about the culture of owners meetings?
Well, they're not like you think they are, first of all. It's the league office, I think, operates under a mentality of divide and conquer, And so they deal with all the owners, and it's not like you'd think a bunch of 32 owners, that get meetings where you really hear people really, taking each other on. It's kind of orchestrated by the league office, like most charities are when you sit on a nonprofit board. So you learn to think you're not going to have a real big impact, because most of the owners kind of think more tribally than they do, collegially and in doing things. So it's really, the commissioner's office really kind of controls everything from that. And there's once in a while, like recently with the Los Angeles, which everybody's read about, with the selection of what teams were to go to Los Angeles. That's probably one of the few times since I've been in a league meeting where the owners stood up to the committees that really recommended two teams, and instead they went against the committee, and I think did the right thing based on the merits or the proposals that were made. But it's a lot like being on a nonprofit board.
We want to thank Steve for showing up and his busy schedule.
Thank you.
Thank you.